His functional, beautiful pieces reflect his skill at his craft and his keen sense of design. Using the flexible medium of glass, he has found a way to create striking works that represent his personal relationship to the unfolding flow of nature. On this edition of Art Now, we'll look at the work of James Downey.
Hi, welcome to Art Now, a program where we talk to artists whose work is part of our community. I'm Pat Sammann, and I'll be your host. Our guest today is James Downey, glass artist and owner of Prairie Fire Glass in Monticello, Illinois. As a young college student, Jim studied art at Western Illinois University, but he only began blowing glass at the age of 42 through a cooperative class offered by the University of Illinois and Parkland College. He continued to study glass blowing at the University of Illinois from 1998 to 2002 when he opened Prairie Fire Glass. Jim, thanks for inviting us to your studio today.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming back.
Okay. Now, your original interest in art was painting. How did you move from that to glass?
Well, you know, when I was going to school in the early 70s, it seemed to be a pretty well-kept secret that an undergraduate degree in painting really doesn't get you very far. So, you know, I had to get a regular job, raise a family, do all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I took a stained glass class and actually just really fell in love with the process orientation. Some of the trouble that I had with painting is I never really knew when I was done. And with stained glass, with blown glass, when you're done, there's no going back. So, yeah, I did stained glass as a hobby for about 25 years before I actually started blowing glass.
Ah, okay. How do you think your training in painting influences what you do with glass?
You know, to a certain degree, I feel like a lot of times like I'm painting with glass. The nature of the layering with glass lends itself to kind of painterly sensibilities. The material I use when I blow glass, the color I use most often is frit and powder, so I can blend that a lot, like you can blend watercolors or paint. So, yeah, and because I didn't start blowing glass until later in life, I don't think I learned the things they normally teach you as you grow up in glass. So I kind of brought to the party the sensibilities that I already had, and those were more painting sensibilities.
Yeah, okay. Let's just look at a few of your blown glass pieces to give our viewers a sense of your work. These include a wide range of colors and shapes. This first one is called Firewater.
Yeah, it decided it was going to be called Firewater. You know, honestly, in most cases, I'm just playing with color relationships. I very rarely have an idea of what the finished outcome is going to be. So sometimes they name themselves, sometimes they tell me who they are, sometimes they don't. This one did.
Okay. This is Rising. Love the orange color. It really glows.
A lot of, you know, I seem to be kind of like, you know, an earth theme, a water theme, a fire theme. It just seems like there's, you know, kind of certain themes that run through my work, and obviously that's the fire theme.
Right. Okay, and then we've got this CB Blues Squat Urn.
Yeah, there's a little watery theme with that one, I think.
Definitely. We have the Rainbow Amphora.
Yeah, this, you know, that one actually was kind of a paint the sky thing. I think last spring maybe, I just kind of had this thing in my mind with the whole paint the sky. So that was, how many colors can you get on one piece and still keep them distinct? So I was really pleased with the way those turned out. Where there's that, you know, really subtle color blend, but the colors didn't get muddy or just, you know, kind of run together. So yeah, I was happy with that piece.
Okay. This is Nebula 1.
No, actually that's across the lake.
Oh, that's across the lake?
Yep.
Okay.
That's across the lake.
Sorry.
So that's, I mean, that's probably the, you know, most literal landscape piece I do. I do a lot of landscapey things, a lot of skyscapes, but that one's a pretty literal landscape that I actually started doing after I spent the 4th of July at my brother's place up in Wisconsin on the lake. Came back and started doing lakey sunsetty things.
Right, right. Okay. This is
There's Nebula.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, this one actually, you know, I get ideas about color relationships from driving down the road, looking at the sky, looking at flowers on the side of the road. This one actually was, I was watching a TV program on the Hubble telescope, and they were just showing these incredible color combinations, and I decided I wanted to come back and see how I could translate that into glass.
Yeah. I think you did a good job. This is a fluted bowl.
Yeah, that one's off the keys. And, you know, kind of green and blue, watery on the outside, sunsetty on the inside. Nice thing about it, I mean, you can almost have like two different things going on with a piece like that. If it's up high, you see a totally different piece than if it's down low.
And this is a nebula vase.
Yep, there's another nebula piece,
Okay.
which, you know, although the inspiration was the Hubble telescope, it kind of comes out landscapey. I can't help myself. That's just what comes through me.
Okay. And then we have this beautiful orange, purple, and turquoise vase.
Yeah, that's another firewater variation. You know, normally when I work out a color design, you know, I'll make a couple of pieces. If I like the directions going, I'll make a couple of more until I get bored with it, and then I'll stop. And if people respond to it, then maybe I'll come back to it someday, but you never know.
Yeah. Okay, and one more flared vase here.
Yeah, that's another, you can see that's actually another version of Off the Keys, the same as the Flutie Bowl, but you know, totally different personality in a long, tall vase as opposed to a wide open bowl.
Now, if you do have an inspiration like the nebula one or the keys, do you do a series of pieces?
Yeah,
like
normally
that?
I'll do, like I said, well, I'll make a couple of them because when you're working on the glass, you can't really tell what the colors are going to look like because it's so distorted by the heat. So you kind of got to wait till the next day.
Right.
So I don't want to make like 3 or 4 of them and then end up with like 4 ugly children the next day. So I'll
Right.
play around and make 1 or 2. You know, and in most cases it evolves over a period of a week or so. Where I'll make that first couple, it's not really, I'm not completely happy with it, but there'll be a part of it I like. So I can expand on that and follow it a little bit.
Yeah.
I found out after blowing glass now for 10 years that my muse's name is What If. So what if I did this, opens a door to a hallway with other doors and other hallways, and glass blowing is a real process-oriented thing. So that's the way pretty much my brain works too. So yeah, the medium suits me well.
Great, very good. I guess one other question would be how much you plan before you create a piece?
I try not to think too much, honestly. It really is about color relationships and ideas about color. I learned, you know, when you first start to blow glass, you get this idea, you know, you get some basic skills and you start thinking, okay, I am the master, you are the inorganic material. And then you start to realize that the glass actually has a personality and a temperament of its own that you have to respect and you have to work with. So I learned that I'm in the driver's seat when it comes to color. But the glass and I work together in terms of shape or form. I might be thinking one thing, and if somewhere along the way it tells me, we're not going there, I listen now. There was a time I didn't, and I fought a lot. I choose not to fight now, so.
All right. Well, given that, we're now going to watch as you create a piece, and you're going to walk us through the steps as you go along.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and make a little piece. I'm going to make a little fluted bowl, shaped like this, but in this kind of design, kind of silvery and red. So we're going to start with the blow tube. Stainless steel tube, rubber handle, plastic mouthpiece. I'm going back into the glass furnace. Inside the big insulated box is a ceramic crucible, and inside the ceramic crucible is the liquid clear glass, 2100 degrees. So from here on out, I'm turning the pipes. If I stop turning, gravity is your friend. But in this case, we create a meeting of 2,000 degree glass and a wooden floor in a 150-year-old building, and I prefer that not happen. So everything I make with blown glass starts as a little blob of clear, just like that. What I use for color most often is frit. Essentially crushed glass, almost like colored sand. Comes in all different colors, opaque colors, transparent colors, really fine like a powder, big and chunky like aquarium gravel. So depending on the effects you want to get, you can use different colors and layer them, somewhat like watercolors. You can use big pieces and little pieces to get different effects. So glass, of course, at the temperature we live at, is a solid, but at a molecular level, it's a liquid. This glass gets soft around 1500 degrees, is liquid around 2000. So that's pretty much my working range. Depending on the size of the mass of glass, it can lose that 500 degrees in 10, 15, 20 seconds. So that's why I've got this piece of equipment. This is called the glory hole. Essentially gas barbecue grill on steroids. It's got a big burner on the side with a fan attached to that, lined with a refractory material that reflects the heat back in. So that can go from room temperature up to about 2,000 degrees. It's pretty close to where it is now, in probably 10 minutes. So I'll put on a layer of frit. Once the surface has got frit on it, it's not hot enough to accept anymore, so I warm it up a little bit. Because essentially this is like blowing up a balloon on the end of a pipe. So I've got to put on multiple layers of this frit, anticipating how much bigger this might be than what it is right now. So just like when you blow up a balloon, the color is really dark when it's small, and the bigger it gets, the more the color gets stretched out and the more diffuse it gets. If I want to keep nice bright colors, I've got to put on multiple layers of this frit. But I'm making a relatively small piece today, so I'll use some opaque red first. I'll use a real fine transparent red. And this actually is a relatively simple color application. Sometimes the landscapey pieces, I might spend up to an hour and a half just putting color on multiple layers of glass. Not always the most exciting thing to watch because it's about an hour and a half of dip, heat, dip, heat, dip, heat. But for me, that's the fun part. I'm just like a little kid playing with the colors. So we put on 3 or 4 coats of that. Now we're going to let that melt in a little bit. And at 2,000 degrees, it doesn't take very long. Okay, so we got it all melted in. I roll it on that steel table just to squish some of that glass off the end of the pipe. And now I'm going to use my little cherry wood block, kind of like a wooden spoon. Been soaking there in a bucket of water. And I'm going to smooth that little blob into a nice symmetrical shape. And because that block was sitting there in a bucket of water, it's also cooling that outside surface, making kind of a cool skin. So now we're going to get a little bubble started. Watch the little ball. So I blow into the pipe really hard, fill the pipe with air, put my thumb over the hole so the air can't get out. Air in the pipe heats up, expands, creates pressure, and you can see blows a bubble into that soft little blob of glass. Let this hang. We're going to get a little bit of clear glass on the end of just a straight steel pipe. I'm going to cool it and shape it just a little. Make it a little easier to control. Kind of made it into like a little cone shape almost. I'm going to heat that up a little bit. Warm up that guy a little bit so it's not too cold. Helps to be ambidextrous when you work by yourself.
I can see that.
So I got to have the surface of that other thing a little bit warm. I heat up my little bit of glass. And then we'll kind of just stick it on there. And let the glass kind of be what it likes to be. So I suppose if I really practiced this, I could like write my name or something, but I always kind of like the relationship between randomness and order, where you do things that appear to be random, but somehow in the end, when you get done, they all make sense. So you can see, thick in some places, thin in others. Just stretch that off. So right now, it's all lumpy with that stuff on there. Now we're going to melt that in. So now wherever that clear glass covers the metallic stuff, it won't go metallic. And it'll show the color from underneath, which was red. Now it takes just a little bit for that to melt in because that glass actually, you can see by the end, was getting pretty cold. And then we're going to just smash that on. That little thing, that little extra layer of glass is called an avolio. A lot of Italian terms in glass blowing. People have been blowing glass for 2,500 years and working with glass for 3,500. But the Romans really turned it into kind of an everyday product that regular people can use. So that's why there's a lot of Italian terms. So now we're going to heat this up a little bit. And then we're going to let it hang here. And on another steel rod, I'm going to get a little bit of clear glass. And I'm going to use the steel table to shape it into kind of a cap on the end of the pipe. Okay, so this is the punty. I'm going to warm that up a little bit. Warm this back up again for a few seconds. Not normally too chatty during this part because I count. Hopefully things aren't too hot. Set that on the bench. Stick it to the end. Hopefully in the middle. Doesn't look like it's really in the middle, but it's going to have to be. And drop of water. Breaks off the one, sticks onto the other. So now a lot of times when it breaks off there, it's not really clean or pretty. So there's a little bit of maintenance that you have to do on the end of that. So essentially what I want to do now is only heat up the part that I want to work on, which is just this top edge. The contact point between the glass on the punty and the bottom of the little bowl is maybe the size of a nickel on this one. If it gets too hot down there, the whole thing will wiggle around and it won't be able to control the shape. If it gets too cold, a little tap or vibration and it's enough to have the whole thing break off and fall on the floor, which does happen on occasion. So heat that up just a little more. So I stretch it out a little bit. That kind of evens out the glass. Kind of makes a little even thickness there out there at the end. But I don't want all that ripply stuff, so I'm going to heat it up and I'm going to cut that off. Okay, so I just want to cut off all that ripply stuff there on the end. I always find that to be an interesting state of matter, somewhere between liquid and solid. If it's totally solid glass, you couldn't cut it. If it's totally a liquid, you can't cut it. Somewhere in between. Okay, so now we're just going to open this up. Since I want the fluty bowl to be kind of roughly on the end, we'll chill that a little bit. And I can use the puffer to actually inflate it from the other end. So that helps to stretch the glass out a little bit more evenly, thins it out a little bit. So now when it comes time to open it, it should be pretty easy. So it doesn't really take very much for it to want to open up. So what's going to happen now is I go to heat this up, it's going to open all on its own. Because it's so thin out here, the centrifugal force from the turning and the heat, it'll just flip open all on its own. Then I'll come out, kind of just shake it up and down, and we'll see how it wants to flute here. I don't know if I've ever made a fluty bowl in this design before. So we'll see how it happens. Looks pretty good. So let's see how it will flute. I'll try that again. Sometimes it's a nice gravity flute. Sometimes it needs a little persuasion. I think I'll persuade this one a little bit. So here, we'll just persuade it into something a little more graceful than what it wanted to do all on its own. So you can see it's already started to turn. So now to get it off the pipe, I'm going to put a little water right at the contact point between the glass on the punty and the Evolio. All the way around. And we'll set it on the little pile of insulation. Little tap, breaks right off. That's what it's supposed to do. Still around 1,000 degrees. You get an idea of the pattern on the outside. Inside will be the bright red. So then when I get done, it goes into the annealer. Essentially a big kiln, sitting there at 920 degrees, which is kind of the holding temperature for the glass. So as I work during the day, I'll put pieces in there. At that temperature, a lot of the stress is actually relieved from the glass. If I left that little bowl sitting out here in the relatively cool air, as the surfaces started to cool, they would shrink.
Okay, thanks for that demonstration, Jim.
My pleasure.
Now that we have a good idea about how glass is blown, I'm going to have you look at just a few of your works and talk about some of the other distinctive features. This is a cherry blossom vase, and you've also got one here that's also cherry blossom sunrise. How do you get the dots and the swirls?
That's, we talked about the frit of different sizes. So like with the cherry blossom sunrise, there's kind of a pink in the background. That's a really fine frit. The bigger pieces that look like flowers are actually just bigger chunks of frit. So what I can do is, and pieces like that are normally 3 or 4 layers. The background layer will be the light green, and a piece like the sunrise, I'll put on the pinks on the next layer. More clear glass, put on the kind of greens and blues at the bottom. Pick up the bigger pieces that are kind of the allegorical flowers, and also some little glass threads, which is what makes those wiggly little lines. Because the glass color also comes in big rods that you can heat up a piece of that and pull it into long, skinny little threads, almost like the width of a human hair. So I'll use those in a lot of the landscaping designs because it's kind of the allegorical branch, tree stem kind of thing. Right.
Okay. And these are a different kind of piece. This is a black wrapped vase, and this one's called After the Rain. How do you wind the glass around the vases?
So this is actually, it's almost the inverse of the process I just did in the demo, where I put silver on the piece and then covered it with clear. This one, I cover the piece with clear and then get the silver on a separate little bit instead of clear, stick it to the pipe and literally just start to spin. And it'll pull that glass off almost like fiber optics. And if the piece is hot enough and the glass wrapped around is hot enough, it all sticks on. If either one of them's too cold and you go to reheat it, it pops off, game over, start again.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The first time I did that technique, it was a total accident. I was just trying to do a decorative lip wrap on a piece, and it was so bad and so sloppy that I knew I'd pretty much ruined the piece, so I just kept spinning. And when I got done, it was this barbed wire bird's nest kind of looking thing. I was like, whoa, this is cool. So now I do it on purpose.
That's great. Okay. Now the next pieces we're going to look at here are made of fused glass rather than blown glass. Can you say a little bit about how glass is fused?
Yeah, you know, fused glass is like the yin, to me that's like the yin-yang of glass. Again, I did stained glass as a hobby for probably 25 years. I thought I'd do it as part of the business, but it's difficult to be profitable doing the kind of stained glass I did. Fused glass starts as sheet glass, similar to what they make stained glass windows out of, although they make it specifically to be melted in a kiln.
Yeah.
So pieces like the rainbow pieces are thin strips of glass put on a ceramic kiln shelf, melted together in a kiln in the first step, and then to get the shape, put it over a ceramic mold in the kiln in a separate step, and heat and gravity will bring that flat piece down to take the shape of the mold.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, so the glass blowing is pretty physically demanding. I can do that, 5-6 hours a day, but I can't afford to only make stuff 5 or 6 hours a day. So when things are either cooling down or heating up, that's what I do with fused glass.
Oh, okay. How does that process change the types of pieces you make?
It's totally different. It's a totally different creative process. It's a totally different physical and technical process. But I actually like it because I've got a really short attention span. So with fused glass, I can start to work on a piece. If I want to walk away, I can come back and work on it over a period of a week for some 10 minutes or an hour at a time. But yeah, totally different process. A lot more like working with stained glass, which I enjoy doing, but much more immediate gratification. Because instead of having to do lead and solder and all that other stuff, I melt it in the kiln and stuff.
Sounds good. Okay, this one is Rainbow Curve. We've got curved fringe serape.
Yeah, all of those, lots of little pieces.
Yeah, that is a lot of little pieces. And woven serape.
Lots and lots of little pieces in that one.
Now, does that take a long time? Do you have to put some of them together and then come back? Or?
Yeah, actually what I'll do with some of the pieces like that is I'll actually take thin strips of glass and fuse them into wider bars, kind of multicolored bars, so they're a little easier to handle and cut than individual pieces. But one like that's very time consuming because the pieces have to fit together perfectly. So there's not just the cutting, but there's the grinding to make sure everything fits together perfectly. So it's, they're very labor intensive. But again, for me, if it's a creative process I enjoy, I don't care.
Sure.
As long as I'm having fun, that's what matters.
Sounds good. These next pieces are flattened bowls. How do you, well, I think you've said that would be put into a mold. Is that how that would be achieved?
So this one is a more, obviously a more random pattern than the serape patterns or the straight line patterns. So this one is definitely a little bit more abstract expressionist. And this is just lots of little pieces, again, melted flat. I'll cut it into the round shape and grind and polish the edges and then back over a bowl mold. And heat and gravity will take that flat disc and then slump it down into that bowl shape.
Okay, and then I've got just a couple more of those here.
Similar process, maybe a little bit more organized than the last one.
Right, and then we have this one with the black, white, and silver.
Yeah, those are all very just kind of, it's the whole randomness and order thing. It's like, you're just literally putting pieces down one at a time, not with a particularly high expectation of what the outcome is, and then just, when you get done, it's either yay or and sometimes that happens, sometimes that happens with blown glass. You open the needle the next day and sometimes it's yay and sometimes it's But you always learn something from the ohs too. So.
That's right, absolutely. Okay, well, I want to thank you for allowing us to see you work. It was wonderful.
Appreciate you coming today.
Thanks for watching Art Now. Our guest has been James Downey at Prairie Fire Glass, and you can see his art in his shop in Monticello, Illinois. Also, if you're interested in learning how to blow glass yourself, Jim does offer classes at his store. So we hope you enjoyed today's show, and we also hope it will inspire you to explore the local art scene and to make your own art now.